Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to report on some aspect of DOI minting. And first of all, I'm really pleased to see how many of the GGOS components have actually mentioned DOIs. I think having done this 5 years ago, no one would even think about it. So I'm here as chair of the GGOS DOI committee for geodetic datasets. We exist actually as a working group since 2019. And looking at what is happening now, it was really good timing. There are increasing DOI-related activities worldwide, and there are increasing requirements to make data fair, according to those FAIR principles: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I'm very happy to hear that the group that was just presented by Taylor, the GGOS Committee on Data and Information Systems, is working in the same direction. And especially when we speak about metadata, there might be a lot of connections, and it would be great to take joint forces there. The major motivation was very, very clear from the beginning, and this was to get credit for all the work that the people, institutions, correlators, agencies, every group, every person, every part of the big community is doing to provide, to measure, to generate, to process, and to distribute the data. And the DOIs can support this because I think you all know that the DOIs, people say it's just an identifier. However, it's not an identifier. It is an identifier that must go along with standardized metadata. Most data centers are registering through DataSite, and they have quite a convenient metadata schema for discovery that can be used and can provide like a common thread across even very different techniques. This doesn't mean that this metadata schema is giving all the information you need. If I look into Geodesy ML, there must be, it's much more detailed, but it is definitely something that complements and should be used to improve discovery. This metadata must be machine actionable. Today, most people are still using XML, but there's an increasing movement also to use JSON files to register DOIs. And if you look at the DataSite schema website, you have two possibilities. No matter what format you do, the most important is the information you have inside. And I think this makes the DOIs different to other identifiers. The DOI data publications with the site DOIs are fully citable in scholarly literature. Looking at journal policies, they even ask for. So to the left, you have the very comprehensive requests from AGO journals. When you submit your paper, you must provide a link to the data. A data described in a paper must be cited, must be made available, and this was something that is not normal for many years, but it's now possible, and that's what you can see on the right with the Springer Nature. They even provide clear indication of how you cite the data, which means you really have to cite it in the paper and to put the full reference in the references list, because only there it can be found by all these citation analysis tools and put into this further ranking of research output into assessments. So credit through citation, what does it mean? On one hand, it means you should cite your data in the papers. And of course, you should cite the papers and the data. And this makes also the connection. And this citation, all this is now happening in an increasing interdisciplinary and data-driven world. So no matter what we within the Geodesy community are agreeing upon and speaking about, if I look at the GGOS focus areas, already there you reach beyond the Geodesy. So there are many, many more people around it, especially in data-driven science. It all must be machine understandable, machine findable, including the citations, because only then you can ensure that the credit is given for everything. The other, I would call it a success example, is really one approach in Australia to create this collaborative national high-resolution geophysics data platform by bringing all the participating data from different types, from GNSS, magnetotelluric seismics, and many others, onto one HPC environment to really enable joint geophysical analysis. And latest there, we need to really make sure that the citations and all the references and all the metadata must be machine readable and really provide credit back to the person who's actually putting the GPS station in the ground, for example, or the institution running a supralight gravimeter. Okay, so I speak about citations. To the left, you see it's an example from GFZ Data Services, because I can best speak about it as I'm running this repository. That's the classical way to provide citations for persons. That's what you know from references in papers. It is, however, more important to also have it, and this is to see to the left, to include all the DOIs in the machine readable metadata. This is something that is not the mandatory fields in DataCite, but they are recommended and we should use it, because these digital inclusions, the provision of citations in the metadata makes them machine findable, machine understandable, and therefore wherever you set your metadata, the machine will know without persons looking, because this is the achievement of all. This is what we have to do. And the citations should include input data, code stations, DOIs for data reports, for example, and of course, publications and things about how to analyze the data and to describe the new method. So what is often the case in Geodesy is that you have like hierarchical products, and we have already, and you might know this slide, we have developed a concept for how to deal with these hierarchical products. This is for the COSG monthly gravity field series, where you have you have these different solutions from the different data centers. In this case, most of them have been signed with the DOI already, and then you have this combination product. And you can make the connection between the original and the solutions of the analysis centers and the combination through the DataCite metadata. And for the COSG, we even made sure that all the authors of the originating solutions are co-authors on the COSG combination product to really provide this classical citation thing. I would say this is the easy case, because we only speak about like 6 solutions and 1 combination product. If I look into IGS, for example, and also here, I only use 1 type of product. I don't go into all 3 products, and not to any reanalysis product, but just to show the wealth. So we are coming back again with my little DOI for the data of the GGOS station, which will be the recommendation from the GGOS DOI committee. And we have about 500 of them. That's definitely not 500, but then. So we have all these combinations, and they are sent and measured and combined by 13 global analysis centers. And their solutions are then sent to 1 analysis center coordinator that is currently in HGA with Anna. And if we look into how to cite them, of course, we have to make sure that the AC solutions cite all the participating IGS solutions, stations that are sending the data. And at this point, you see the dimension, the numbers of citations you would require. And of course, the ACC combined products have to cite the AC solutions. Here we go. Can you cite more than 100 DOIs in a data set, for example? I think it is much easier for a data repository than for a journal, because if we speak about like 500 citations, this would mean about 30 pages, and each journal would have 30 pages, all with the same authors, all with whatever. For data centers, it's much easier. So, as I said, citations must be included in the DataCite metadata. That is the most important thing. It is, and I must admit, not easy with these fully automated general repositories like Zenodo, because there you have to put individually every DOI, and I would never like to put in more than 20, for example. It is, however, not a problem for DataCite. And this is the proof, I would say. That is a data publication for the compilation of the global heat flow database. They have collected data for 70 years, and each data value has a reference, and in total there are 1,500 references, and we made sure to include all of these in the DOI reference. no one will ever read the full thing, but all of these are in the data side metadata. And the latest example I have done is 3,700 references for a global isotope database, whatever. So it is possible. We might need to step back from fully automated processes because there is no data center, or like for example, look to CDDIS. Everything is fully automatized and there's no place for example, more than 2 authors. But it is very easy to manually compose the metadata. And if we speak about a handful of DOIs only, you can have some tools to, I'm not writing these manually. I have a nice Excel sheet where I can just put any DOI and it's provided me with this XML text. And it took me, I think the search for the DOI was longer than actually putting it in the metadata. So this is something where I would also suggest that we might go back, step back a little from the fully automatized approach, but really think about a good concept, and there are possibilities to include it. For papers, it is more important, more difficult, but still, because journals often limit, and I made the example with so many pages, there is a group in the Research Data Alliance that is the global community for research data management. It's really global and it's beyond the earth sciences, it's across all disciplines, and even with libraries. So it's really everyone who deals with data management. And they're currently, because there's very, very many citations are not only the case in Geodesy, they're also for Fluxus, for climate modeling data, all the CMIT data, there are millions of files, and you have to really include all of these, you must cite them. And their idea, and the working group is still ongoing, there will be the next plenary in almost a month's time in Costa Rica. And the idea is to somehow create a container that includes all the DOI that should be cited, and to cite this one object, no matter how they call it, in the paper, and to develop a software tool that allows the publishers of the journal to like unpack it and to put all the included DOIs in the machine-readable metadata. This guarantees that they are in this digital world, and also that they don't have to print it in their papers. I'm part of this group, and I'm bringing in the Geodesy use case because we are one of those who really need it. And I hope they will come with a solution very soon, and then we can think about how to implement it. So this is something that it's not yet ready, but on a good way, I would say. And then at the very end, I would like to raise a more ethical question, because it has had come up many times this year when I was in Japan at the IVS symposium. And I know that many geodetic data sets or data products are not distributed only by one data center, but by several. And the question is, do you need a new DOI for that or not? And when you have a new DOI, who shall be the authors and who is the publisher? If you just take the identical data set, the identical files, and you just distribute it through another data center. An argument for yes would be that, of course, if a data center actually stores the data, you need to have a means to download the data. But does this need to be a DOI, reflecting that DOIs are now much more than just a identifier? They're different. Versus an identifier, we could think about handles, which are also unique identifiers pointing to an object, but they're not yet citable. So I think this is something that came up in a discussion with ESA, for example. An example for no, and that's already existing, is for the GRACE level 2 data that are also that were like at this time they were produced by GFZ. They got their DOI by GFZ. You see it with the DOI prefix here, which is the DOI prefix of GFZ data services. And this data is distributed through PODAC under the GFZ DOI. If I look at the authors and the publisher, there are still ways to improve. But I think this is something that we should together discuss and find a solution that is fair and just for many persons, and that is not attempting or giving the impression that someone is like stealing the data and putting their names on it. So I would think that DOIs, because they provide the credit for the data originators, should not change when the identical data is distributed through other data centers. We can use other identifiers, And of course, if a data center is somehow further enriching the data and promoting this, of course, requires a new DOI, but then of course, the original data should be cited. So to sum up, summary. The proper citation of DOI-related objects is crucial to give credit, and these citations must be most and foremost provided in this machine-readable metadata. And also for the metadata, I would like to add that it's really every data center and every DOI provider should really look into the recommended for discovery properties, because they really provided a good framework for making data findable even beyond this specific data center. And that's together with making it's an answer to the question, how much does people know, what do people know about Geodesy? Because if you make your data findable, people might find it wherever they are on the internet. And this is so I think we really should look into this rich and standardized, rich metadata. And technically, I've shown that it's possible to add unlimited numbers of citations. So the argument, I don't know how, that's too many, that's too much work, there are means to overcome this. It is, of course, challenging with journals. And we definitely need to continue discussions about ethics and DOI assignment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kirsten, for this useful presentation. Any questions?
Hi, Kirsten. Thank you for this. So I remember we were in Japan earlier this year, and we spoke about this, and one of the options was to list everybody for everything. Another option that was floated was if something is in the IGS, you cite the IGS, and everything is cited to the IGS, and then the IGS has a list of everybody. Can you talk about the problems with that and why we shouldn't do that?
You mean just linking to a website where all the contributors are listed?
So like if something is coming from VLBI, then the IVS would own the DOI and everybody would link to that DOI.
Yeah.
Okay, can you talk about why, like, would that be acceptable or is that too vague?
It's interesting. I think the example I showed in Japan was that, well, it was related to this one IVS DOI with 300 authors, because everyone is author, it has to be author. And for the next version, I would suggest to have IVS as the first author. So the citation will be IVS. But I think linking it to a list in the internet is definitely not the same as including them in the machine-readable metadata. Because what happens when I register a DOI, I send the XML to DataCite. And there are increasing activities to bring data together. And the first data center for getting metadata is the DataCite catalog. So there you have to have this, this connection to all the persons, to the institutions, and we even spoke about adding, for example, the radio telescopes as contributors. And this, I think, we need a concept for that, really to make sure, because there's a limited number of concepts. And of course, with the COSG example, we have not included each and every author because there were so many, but we should have done. So it's something that, but it's definitely not a solution to just link it to a website, because that is not, it has to be in this digital thing. Because then, and that's really cool, and I didn't show this, because if you really put the references to papers all in your metadata, there are some journals, especially from Elsevier, who have implemented this, that add links to the data, even at any stage where you publish the data, when you cite a paper from them. So you go to the paper and suddenly you find, oh, look, there's data on this paper. And you can go to it from the paper side. And that's really making the connection between the researchers who live in their paper worlds and the data persons.
Thank you.
Very quick one. Why does the data distribution center matter so much?
I think it doesn't matter, but there are cases, and we had this there was during the IGS governing board meeting, there was a proposal of ESA to just mimic DOIs for everything they have, but this would be ESA DOIs with ESA as the author. And at this point, I think it did matter for the original groups like AUB, like a Bern or a GFZ, who already have minted DOI for these data. So it is, by citing the ESA DOI, people would think that is the data produced by ESA, and that's a big difference, I think.
I fully support this.
There's also an online question. So there's an online question by Holger Stetten. Does every GNSS station need to have a DOI for its data, or can a network of stations have one DOI?
I skipped these because I only had 10 minutes to speak. I would say if you have a network and a fixed group that is maintaining a network, like for example in Sweden, what Holger is doing, a network is fine, but looking into the GNSS stations don't have this, or GNSS doesn't have this central governance like the seismology, where you organize everything according to networks, and you have the central governing organization that is actually providing your network codes, and there you don't need to go on the station level, I think. But for GNSS stations, if I just look at the GFZ network, and we do have a network DOI for the GNSS stations, it includes, I think, 56 stations. 6 of them are not even public. And then there are 23 of them also part of the EUREF network, and others are IGS stations. So it is something that one station may be part of several networks. And this is not always the case that groups are actually creating networks. So in the GGOS DOI working group, we have discussed a lot, and I was the last person to be convinced that we need station DOIs, but I think we have to have them. We are about to publish the metadata recommendations. Hopefully before AGU, we have meetings next week with the final discussions. And but Holger, if you have, we can talk offline if you like. But of course, if you have a network, you can contribute to the network if all stations are equal, I think.
Any other question?